everybody, I'm Mack.
And I'm Ian.
And today we're going to be discussing the 1980 horror classic Friday the 13th, which is directed by Sean Cunningham and is about a bunch of camp counselors in New Jersey who are getting killed.
Wait, Mac. Before we go on with this review, the ambiance just doesn't feel quite right.
Oh, that's much better.
I agree. So, Mac, what'd you think of this? What'd you think of this movie?
Slow and short. Those are the big two words that come to mind. I thought the performances were really good. I especially liked the actresses of Alice and Mrs. Voorhees. I really thought that they kind of carried the film, and a lot of the emotional weight was on those two.
Yeah, I agree with you that it was short. It was an hour 32, which is a pretty short movie, but to me it didn't feel like it. I don't know. It really dragged for me the whole time, and the suspense wasn't really doing it for me, but it wasn't because of the performances. I don't really know what it was that didn't do it for me. The performances were great, but I don't know, I couldn't get into it.
I think a lot of it comes down to this cinematography and the choices behind it. They choose not to show the killer, who, spoiler alert, is Mrs. Voorhees in the end, and a lot of this camera work I think contributes to how slow it is. It's kind of building up to each of these kids getting murdered, and it just takes forever. It's a film that takes place all on one night, Friday the 13th.
Ooh.
But it feels like it's so much more than that.
I don't know if it feels so much more than that. I think it just, to me, this movie wasn't that special, which really sucks because it's such an acclaimed classic. Mm-hmm. And we've been watching Halloween past few nights of October, and Halloween is fun, and I feel like this is a hollow attempt to recreate the beats of Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of a tactic that 20th century horror movies do. A lot of the fear comes from what's not seen. That's kind of the philosophy, and that's that's kind of one admirable trait about this movie, is that the build-up takes so long, and you don't expect the killer to be this grieving mother.
I do really like that twist.
Yeah, me too.
And especially because, to me, someone who hasn't seen these movies, Friday the 13th is so synonymous with Jason. Mm-hmm. So for Jason not to be the killer the whole time blew my mind, which wouldn't have blown anyone's mind when the movie first came out. But now that we're on 15 movies in this franchise, it's just it was what? It wasn't Jason? I was like, oh, now Jason's gonna kill someone else the whole movie, but it wasn't him.
Yeah, this is honestly a movie that I think could have been left alone without all the sequels that came after it, because it just kind of makes it less special. I think, the plot of Jason Voorhees just being alive after this movie is it just doesn't fit in with what this was.
I agree, but the very end, they try to tease that he is alive, but it didn't I didn't believe it.
No, yeah.
Because she woke up from a dream, and it was and she was where's the boy? And then she looks in the camera, and she's that means he's still out there.
Exactly. That ending was a little weird for me. I kind of like that they toy with the idea of there being a supernatural out there, but it really isn't. There's just kind of this I don't want to say normality, that's the wrong word, but it's not a monster that's after them, or it's not some sort of creature. It's just it's a disturbed person.
I have a question.
Sure.
A lot of these early horror movies are really acclaimed for their iconic soundtracks. What do you think of it? Because to me, it's really grating hearing the same song played over and over and over again, and it doesn't add to the suspense every time. It takes away from it even.
I actually don't know if I agree with that. I was gonna say I feel the score almost contributes to the fear. Maybe watching it 40 years after its release date, we're kind of more accustomed to different forms of horror. But back then, this must have genuinely terrified people in the theater, hearing that and not knowing what's on the other side of that screen.
Yeah, I think definitely we've moved so far past traditional horror at this point that that if it's not a jump scare, I don't know. It's to me a movie like this would be considered a thriller now, which is really weird. Mm-hmm. But because it's a horror movie, it's obviously a horror movie. But this kind of slasher flick is more seen as a thriller nowadays, because it's not jump scary or it's not like cheap horror, I guess.
Yeah, and with slasher films today, I guess like I don't know. There's just something like you agree. Like you said, there's something a little bit different about them today. I feel like there's not as much like interesting buildup as there is with this one. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of just like the plot? I don't know the plot.
Listen, I am a professional summer camp counselor, so I'm glad that you asked me this question. I like the vibe. You know, it's like kids in the 80s. They're supposed to be free in the summer, away from their parents. So it's relatable in that sort of sense, I think. To add a murder mystery behind it, kind of thing. I don't know. Like it's an interesting take, but like you said, I think the twist definitely makes it. I think this is ultimately a movie about like, you know, kids being kids and kids being like too wild, and there being consequences behind that.
I mean,
does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense, and I agree. The vibes are there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's like peak summer. I agree. The vibes are great,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I don't know. I just wish, just the whole part of it being like this, like everyone's just getting killed for just having a good time, just because like some other kid died here, like 30 years ago. He drowned, so now the mom is back to kill these people who have nothing to do with it. I don't know. It just doesn't. It feels unrelated. It feels a little incoherent. It makes sense and it's a good twist, but I don't know. I just don't love this movie. I don't know what it is.
I mean, I guess another thing too with like the summer camp element. There's always every summer camp has like these little like legends about like a lost boy or something like that, or some sort of horror element behind it. So I can kind of appreciate that. I feel like it's relatable in that sense. But then again, I know like not everybody goes to summer camp, you know. So
the main demographic of this movie is like
summer camp kids who live in New Jersey. So last thing before we give out our score, Ian, obviously the special effects are what this movie is very much known for, and I think Tom Savini does a very great job. What's your take?
I agree. This is definitely not one of my gripes of the movie. Practical effects will always beat out CGI, in my opinion. I mean, at this point in the game, I know every year they just get better, but like, I don't know, nothing's the same. Practical stuff is just so much better. It's just so much cooler. Yeah,
and I try to think back to like the horror movies that came out in this time, like Carrie, Halloween, and those ones are just so like, those ones are terrifying in my opinion, and they're so bloody. But this one is just like, you have one character get shot with arrows, you have one have an axe in his face, like, and this is like you said, it's not CG at all, like. I don't know, there's something like, I think this was the building block for what a lot of horror movies eventually became because of that.
I definitely agree. And what do you think of this building block monument to horror movies? What would you give it out of 10?
Doing the ratings now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm taking it with a grain of salt because this came out in the 80s, and like we said, it's a little slow. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a pretty solid picture, and I definitely think like this shows like how horror developed over time.
Yeah, I'm not taking it with a grain of salt though. I thought it was slow, thought it was a little boring at times, but the twist was cool, and I don't know, there were some good parts. I mean, it's not a bad movie, but I give it like a 5 out of 10.
So this episode is airing on Friday the 13th actually, and you know, really hope nothing bad comes out of it, you know, right, Ian?
Yeah, surely nothing could go wrong.
Exactly.
Blah!